We're about a week removed from the Switch 2's release, and also Mario Kart World, and as you can imagine, there are lots of mixed opinions about the game and its changes. I mentioned in my Switch 2 Impressions video that I played through the cups, tried to place first in one of the Knockout Tour rallies and failed miserably, and gave online a spin. Since then, I've had a lot more experience with the game. I've played a decent amount of free roam, beat all the staff ghosts, and by the skin of my teeth, won gold in each of the 150cc knockout rallies to unlock Mirror Mode. I played a good amount of online and got my ass handed to me in the never-ending tsunami of shells, banana peels, lightning, and bullet bills. I've also had defeats snatched from the jaws of victory countless times, no thanks to the blue shell. I'll say this right now, I'm having fun. Is it better than Mario Kart 8 Deluxe? I wouldn't say that. Maybe once the imminent DLC packs are marched out, it'll eventually dethrone it, but for right now, by itself, it's good. But, just like anything else, it's not without its flaws. Anyway, let's rip off the proverbial band-aid and do a deep dive into its wound like we're on the magic school bus. What this game tries to do is create a new kind of Mario Kart, which they attempt to do by making every track connected in one world that you can explore on the side. As you would expect, to accomplish this, there was a trade-off or two. For one thing, in Grand Prix, you actually do drive from one track to the next. I think the way they are laid out is very intriguing, but I found it a bit strange because of the pacing. In previous Mario Karts, every track was a loop of 3 to 5 laps usually, sometimes more depending on the track. There was no interconnected world, and you had a sense of where you stood in the race. Many of the tracks have a standard loop format, but most races in Grand Prix and online use the drive to the next track format. To explain how this works, in the Mushroom Cup, for example, Mario Circuit will be your standard 3-lap race. Then for the second race, you'll have to turn out of Mario Circuit and follow a road that eventually leads to the next track. You'll cross checkpoints that count as a lap until you get to the actual track, where you'll loop it just once for the final lap. And that's how each Grand Prix works. Online races are usually in this drive to the next track style. When voting for courses, there are 3 choices, and usually all 3 tracks show that they are connected to the last track, which indicates that it won't be a standard race. Sometimes there are races that are the traditional loop format, but most of the time they're just one-way races. Maybe it's because for years I was used to racing on loop tracks in previous Mario Karts, but this usually throws me off and is jarring. After racing down the straight roads, I often get to the track and think, okay, now we do 3 more laps, and then all of a sudden, after doing only 1 lap, the race is over, and I'm like, oh, that's it? And I can't help but feel that the race was way shorter than it should have been. Like, I'll be in the lower half of the racers, and then I'll get to the track and think that I'll have at least 3 more laps to improve my standing, and then before I know it, it's over with. To be honest, I don't know if I like this kind of race. I think what bothers me about this more than anything is there is no option to pick what type of race you want to do online. In Versus Race, you can choose to do either the 3-lap format or race to another track. Yet online, it kind of forces this new style on you, and you just gotta deal with it. And in time trials, you can only pick the standard 3-lap race style, but there are no time trials for racing from one track to the other, so if you wanted to practice speeding between tracks, you can't do that either. It's just a glaring flaw to me to not give us a choice in these cases. Speaking of one-way styles, I actually do like this concept. What I like is how these tracks transition seamlessly, and it's really cool to drive into the track you're racing to. It kind of brings that sort of hype that you get when you're going to a pro sporting event, like you're driving on the highway and then you start seeing the dome of the arena over the horizon and you know that you're almost there and you start to get excited. World does a really good job of making these tracks fit so well together. What's even more impressive is how distinctive many of these tracks feel, and I often forget that they're actually in this one big world and are connected. The main problem here is the straight, wide open roads between tracks can get dull, especially if you're in the lead, although, to be fair, I'm often too focused on covering my own ass to notice. Still, it can be an issue. I'm happy to say that the tracks themselves are generally good and feel very Mario Kart. I miss the magnetic roads in 8 and wish they brought those back. They did include wall riding, which I guess is supposed to replace the magnets, but I kind of feel like this skill is underutilized in races. Some tracks have little to no place where wall riding would be worth executing, and I was racing Staff Ghost to see where wall riding could be used. One example of wall riding being used is in Bowser's Castle, where you need to jump off this ramp at the correct angle with a mushroom and get enough velocity to bypass the lava and ride on the wall before jumping back onto the track. Considering how tricky it was to pull off this shortcut, I feel like this is more of a time trial trial strat than one you could use in an actual race, especially since you need a mushroom, so you're better off just drift boosting on the regular route. Rail riding is also a thing where using it can give you an edge in specific instances, but just like wall riding, boosting on the road is often better, except if you're using a rail to cut a tight turn or something. The biggest flaw with both techniques is in regular races, it's often better to just drive on the road and saves more time. Maybe this will change once more of the meta is discovered. I will say that it's actually pretty fun to use these techniques, and it's a shame that there are some genuinely interesting paths on these tracks. A part of the fun I had was experimenting on time trials to find paths that I could only get to while wall riding or rail grinding, only to find out that it's faster to go the straight and boring way. So it's like, if you want to win, why take these paths? I feel they made these paths with free roam in mind, and unlike the races, grinding and wall riding are essential in free roam to get to many locations and complete certain objectives. Free roam is its own mode where you just drive around this gigantic sandbox to see what's around, and it's a nice little distraction from the stresses of Mario Kart races. This mode can be good for practicing certain techniques or even just going Tony Hawk by grinding from rail to rail to see how far you can go while pretending the ground is made of lava. The main things to do in free roam are activate question block switches, collect Peach medallions, and complete P-switch missions for stickers to display on your profile. The first two are purely collectible, but P-switches are more interesting. Some missions serve as a teaching tool to help you get more familiar with how various techniques could be used, while others are just kind of like get in a big ass truck and run over everything like it's GTA to get to the goal. Speaking of, you can do things like pilot vehicles besides big rigs like boats and UFOs for a limited time, which can be helpful to get to certain question blocks or medallions. There are quality of life features, such as if you fail a P-switch mission, the game will let you retry and put you back near it so you won't have to drive all the way back to try again. One thing that's really neat is the rewind feature in free roam. Are you trying to get to a high point that's really tricky? Then you could just rewind as many times as needed until you make that tricky jump, wall ride, or whatever. Rewinding can also be done in single player races, but it doesn't seem to work in online races. Yet you can do it in lobbies while waiting, so that's odd. Not that I can think of many reasons to use rewind during races besides like maybe keeping yourself from losing time by falling off the track. For each category, the world map tells you how many of each thing you've gotten, which is nice for keeping track, but this is all the info you get. The world map doesn't reveal where each thing is after completing it, so if you're hunting everything down, you won't know which ones you completed already, so chances are you'll be driving around aimlessly searching for the next medallion or whatever. At least the world looks nice. The world is big and seemingly bustling, with NPCs like Toads and Yoshis walking around in vehicles, driving wherever they're going. And then there are warp pipes and blast barrels you can enter to get to other locations that you didn't know existed. For example, I would find a warp pipe and enter it, and then be taken into this sewer or underground area where there's a medallion or something, and I'd be like, oh, I didn't know this existed. So it's pretty fun finding these locations, and then one time I glided off DK Spaceport at night, and I was flying and looking around me and checking out the vista. I saw the sea, and it was very relaxing. It's so nice to just take in the scenery and explore, but sadly, there really isn't much more to it. Besides the other collectibles and missions, it's kind of empty. You can't talk to any NPCs, and there's no story. It's basically just driving around and seeing what's there, and besides unlocking mirror mode and more stickers, there really is no reason to free roam besides being a completionist or goofing around. This mode could have really benefited from an underlying story, sort of like Diddy Kong Racing or Crash Team Racing. It's really a side feature and nothing more, unfortunately. There are online lobbies in between races where you'll be driving in the overworld, and it's nice to explore while you wait. I think where the world concept really shines is in Knockout Tour, which is one long gauntlet where each lap eliminates the lowest ranking players until there are only 4 left. Seeing each track transition gives a sense of progress, and the amount of stress from having racers a second or two behind you is very high. And knowing there's no point system and or a clean slate that a standard Grand Prix can provide, the only deciding factor is who finishes first, and that makes it all the more stressful for those who lead. That's what makes it so fun. I mentioned in my last video how hard this mode can be against computers, and that still stands. I talked about how I tried to place first a few times in the Golden Rally and just could not win, either because the leading CPU got too far ahead or I just couldn't pass the leader before I got hit with an item, which then snowballs from there. Sometimes I felt that it really depended on luck, like if you're in first for the home stretch and the CPU is right behind you, which isn't uncommon, then if a blue shell is fired, you're basically done for and have to try again. As you might imagine, it could be frustrating. I actually had a video of my reactions where, let's say I got really passionate. Here are a few highlights. Fuck off, Luigi. No, fuck you. Fuck you. Oh my god. You're supposed to be on my side, you asshole. Fuck you, Mario. Fuck you. Fuck you! Fuck you! No! Fuck! Yeah, I got rid of it for a reason. What can I say except I am very competitive. Anyway, let's bury that and move on. What I won't bury, though, is how I initially felt about Knockout Tour. Out of frustration, I said I hated it, thinking it was entirely luck-based despite one supposed skill level, and that's because I was overconfident. I thought these were going to be a breeze. After all, I did so well in the Grand Prix. I was convinced that I proved my amazing skill, and my expectations were smacked down like an annoying mosquito. But instead of saying screw it and giving up, I dove deeper into the game's mechanics by experimenting, racing, and beating each Snap Coast, and becoming familiar with each track because I couldn't accept the fact that I couldn't pass and beat CPU opponents in Knockout Tour. The result was that it got easier for sure, but the luck factor was still there to an extent, mainly because of the blue shell among other items. What helped me overcome this was actually letting the CPU lead, especially in the beginning for a bit before blue shell came. There is a high chance of it happening. This wasn't a smoking gun, but it decreased tension, and when blue shells were rare in rallies, I sometimes found myself actually far ahead of my opponents and breezed to the finish. No doubt the computers are hard this time around. I won't lie when I say that this mode really seems to be more for playing against other players rather than CPUs, because racing against CPUs is rather dry compared to the craziness of online races. CPUs just don't do as much in races, and in Knockout Tour, as stressful as it can feel, it does get dull if you're in the lead. Once I won gold in every rally, while I was satisfied with myself, I was surprised that nothing happened. You'd think it'd be worth it to endure single player with a seemingly perfect and robotic AI by winning each 150cc cup and rally, but not really. And that's my next issue with Mario Kart World. Besides Grand Prix, there really is no incentive to do anything else besides bragging rights. I was thinking that placing first in the rallies would unlock more characters, but to my surprise, there was none of that. Even more shocking, supposedly you don't even have to place first in each cup to unlock the characters. I don't have issue with not needing to place first to play as Daisy or Rosalina. In fact, I think it's better for casuals who just want to play as their favorite characters. Does anybody remember unlocking Dry Bowser in Mario Kart Wii? That was fun. This brings up how the free roam characters like Charge and Chuck and Spike need to be unlocked. You unlock them by being transformed into them by the Comic Orb, if you're lucky. I got lucky to get Charge and Chuck right away, but Spike, on the other hand, took me hours to get before I unlocked him. What's more, another racer has to use the comic item, and you can't transform yourself when you have it. Not only that, but the comic item is pretty rare, especially when compared to other items like Lightning, which gets used almost every race. And this method to unlocking these characters seems so convoluted, so just why? You could have had us complete the Knockout Tour rallies, free roam objectives, or time trials, and yet this is how you let us unlock the free roam characters? It just puzzles me. Meanwhile, vehicles are unlocked purely by collecting coins, and a lot of them look great, although I do miss the customization options that provide an extra layer of personalization and/or meta to races. I do wish that vehicles let you choose your colors. Some cars I love, like the Real Racer, look amazing. As much as I love red and black, I think it would have been cool if the colors matched my racer better. I just like color coordination, you know? I think World would have really benefited from having something unlocked when you do everything. Maybe it could be a gold Mario, like they gave you in 8 Deluxe when you got gold cups in each Grand Prix, or even an achievement sticker to show off to online players. Apparently, when doing everything, even 3-starring every cup and rally doesn't give you anything. The game doesn't even congratulate you, so that's a bit of a letdown. And one last thing about gameplay. Where the hell is 200cc? This was such a big part of Mario Kart 8, and to see it absent here is baffling. I'm not a game developer, so I don't know what goes into making games like this. I'm hoping that maybe they'll put it in a future update because producer Kosuke Yabuki didn't say that there wouldn't be 200cc races included in an update, and I'd be shocked if it wasn't put in at some point. If that actually were the case though, then I would be let down by it. It's not necessarily a deal breaker for me, but I think this would be a deal breaker for many veteran karters, so why not include it? We'll just have to wait and see. Of course, the game looks great, and I love how expressive every character is here. Each character has more personality than ever. They'll look at the crowd and flex to them, and then they'll look at other racers and give them that let's get it on face. And everything that happens to them, they react to. It's just so good how they look here. And then their costumes provide another layer to their depths. Like Waluigi has this mariachi outfit that seems like a nod to Waluigi's taco stand. So I guess Waluigi being a taquero is now canon. Bowser has this cool biker outfit that reminds me of Arthur Fonzarelli. Sadly, none of the free roam characters have outfits, which I find to be a huge letdown. Like, I would have loved to see the Penguin wear like, I don't know, Hawaiian shirt and shades, or maybe Charge and Chuck could be dressed as a referee or something. Maybe this will change in the future. And do I even need to talk about how freaking great Wario looks here? He looks amazing in all of his outfits, and especially his Pro Racer outfit that perfectly accentuates his figure. Just look at the folds on this man, the bulging, the glistening, and then he hits question blocks with his ass. You cannot convince me that Wario has never looked his best here. Am I allowed to talk about how amazing a 3D Wario Land on Switch 2 would be? Nintendo, you gave DK a second 3D game with Bonanza, and he 1,000,000% deserved it, but just a 3D Wario would make me so happy. So please, Doug Bowser, somebody, anybody, I'm begging you guys. Now, what I really want to brag about is one of my most favorite parts of this game, and it's the soundtrack. This is arguably one of the best soundtracks I've ever listened to. There are themes I never thought I'd hear in a Mario Kart game, and it was so much fun when I heard a track's melody and tried to remember where I heard it from. You could easily leave this game on the menu screen and it'll cycle through the tracks, and it's actually what I did for background music in this video. It's that good. The only thing I wish is that they included a jukebox feature or sound test so that we could see what tracks are on here and get access to them. In free roam, I heard a tune that was extremely familiar and I was like, wait a minute, I know this song. And it was a remix of Dribble and Spit's Taxi music that played on their radio in the first WarioWare game. And when I realized it, I was like, holy crap, this theme is in Mario Kart. Now, I'm not the type to be like, this absolutely confirms that we'll see WarioWare characters in Mario Kart World, but this gives me a little hope that we'll see one of Wario's buddies here at some point. For me, this soundtrack rivals Super Smash Bros. Soundtracks with their variety, and it really tells me how much they tried to make this as fun and memorable as Mario Kart could be, if not more. But that takes us to the big question. Is this game worth $80? This is a good edition of Mario Kart, but I think you'd be hard-pressed to find many people who think paying $80 for any game is worth it. And as good as this one is, when Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is cheaper, gives arguably a similar experience on the Switch One, and has 200cc races, I would suggest waiting for a price drop or sale, and maybe a few updates before getting a Switch 2. As much as I love physical media, I got the Switch 2 bundle with Mario Kart World only because I didn't want to pay $80 to experience a new Mario Kart that we've waited 2 generations for. At some point, when more DLC is released and they inevitably release a deluxe version of World, maybe paying $80 will sound more realistic, but even that might be a stretch for some people. With all the tracks and characters they released in 8 Deluxe, World is very vanilla still. Obviously, it's not there yet. If you thought this review was helpful, then feel free to leave a like, maybe subscribe if you feel so inclined, and if you got other thoughts or feedback, I'd be happy to hear them, so definitely let me know in the comments. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.